David dances, showing us to be crazy about God. After they parked God's holy Ark of the Covenant, something fun happened. The house where they left the ark was blessed, blessed, blessed. That means good stuff started happening to that man and all his family. After 3 months, David heard about this, and he knew he had to go get that holy box. God's glory was with it, and he wanted God's glory with him and the people of Zion. He saw the value of God's blessing and glory, and he wanted it close, close, close. So David decided to try again to bring God's holy box to Zion. But this time, he asked God about it and found out how to do it right. He realized that God's instructions were that the ark should have been carried by the priests. David thought, no more wondering why Uzzah died. We were disobeying God's command. We were doing it our own way without asking God. God's glory had been away from God's children for so many years that people didn't even remember what God had commanded. But now David knew that bringing God's glory back meant doing it God's way. So that's exactly what they were going to do. David gathered together the priests to carry God's holy box exactly the way God said in his instructions to Moses. The priests had gotten ready, and together they lifted the ark with its poles and carried it on their shoulders. God's glory was coming to Zion. It was a wonderful day. David brought together many musicians to play happy music on cymbals and trumpets and harps. People from all the tribes of Israel were there. Everyone was shouting and celebrating. The ark, God's holy box, where his glory and throne were, was coming to be with his children again. There wasn't anything in the whole world that could have made David happier than that. As a good leader, David knew that having God's glory with them mattered. Your glory, O God, I've got to have it. I can't live without it. I can't lead without it. You being with us matters. And now that God's throne, the glory box, was with him, David was going to show God just how much it mattered to him. He wanted to break through every barrier between him and God. He craved God's glory and presence, and he knew that good leaders have to be completely abandoned to God. David clapped his hands, jumped for joy, and started dancing, dancing, dancing. You can stand up and dance with David if you want. To God, his God, who was full of love that endured forever. My soul thirsts for you in a dry land where there is no water. God, his God, had led them out of Egypt. David threw off his kingly robe and spun around with his arms stretched out. I will thank the Lord with all my heart. I will tell about all your amazing deeds. God, his God, had given them his laws. David thrust his hands to heaven as high as he could reach. Hooray for God! I will lift my hands to your commands, which I love, love, love. God, his God, who had saved them from their enemies so many times. David flicked off his shoes and kicked up his feet high into the air. I love you, Lord, my source of strength. I called to the Lord, who is worthy of praise, and I was delivered from all my enemies. God, his God, who was good and wise and strong and powerful. What a great and living God! David danced faster and faster. He maybe even did a few backflips. Oh Lord, our Lord, how magnificent is your reputation throughout all the earth! David danced, danced, danced with all his heart, soul, mind, and strength for God. He danced into the city and through the streets. He humbled himself and celebrated the glory of God with everything he had. David was going absolutely crazy for his God. It's important for you to know that David was not being silly. Anyone can act silly. In fact, some people act silly or crazy so that they can get people to laugh at them. They just want people's attention. But that was not what David did. David, a man after God's own heart, humbled himself and danced, unashamed. He just threw away self and pride and was humble and undone before God, which is totally different from attention-grabbing silliness, huh? Everyone else was celebrating too, all of Israel, together as one, bringing the ark into Zion. At some point, David sang, "How good and enjoyable it is when God's people live together in peace and unity. It's like precious oil poured on the head and running down the beard. It's where the Lord pours out His blessing, even life forever." Finally, they got to the tent David made for God's holy ark, and the priests put it inside. They offered sacrifices to God and sang to Him. David gave gifts to all the people and blessed them. David also chose men to take care of God's holy box, and he chose more men to devote their time to praising God with music. After that, David headed home to bless his own household.